The AFC West Fantasy Football Preview and Best Bets edition of Old Fashioned Football on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network is brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. You can win up to 325 times your entry with their new Pick 8. Just use promo code OFFSGPN to claim your special pick, plus first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code OFFSGPN. We're also brought to you by Rhythm. Get the best data-driven props and picks from Rhythm. Claim your 7-day free trial by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM.
Hey, what's up? This is Sam Acho, and you're listening to Old Fashioned Football.
Old Fashioned Football.
Make this deal right now, you pancake eating mother.
All right, deal.
Old Fashioned Football.
Welcome to Old Fashioned Football. If you're wondering who you're listening to, this is J Mark. You can find me on the X at J Mark Football. And if you're joining us on the YouTube and going, wait a minute, this looks different. Miranda is on a work call, could not get off. She's on with the boss and the boss's boss. Those are things that you just can't say, hey, I'm out. I got to step away and go drink whiskey. But the show must go on. The good news is we have some guests. I'll be bringing them on in just a second here. And we're talking AFC West. Going to talk a little Chiefs, which I know everybody that's not a Chiefs fan in the AFC West is tired of hearing about. The Chargers, the Broncos, the Raiders. But yeah, and usually this is where I ask Miranda, what are we drinking today? I am drinking a little special Breckenridge Broncos blend, the orange blend. Big fan of them. If you missed our distillery interview with Brian Nolt, the founder of Breckenridge Distillery, that was episode 111. So go check that out because he's a really fun guy. He was a doctor, just decided, hey, I can do the science. I want to open my own distillery. Wish I was in a position to just be like, hey, I'm just going to open a distillery, but I'm not. So here I am just drinking whiskey and enjoying it. Before I bring our guests on, just remember this is Old Fashioned Football, but we're on the Sports Gambling Podcast Network and we got a ton of shows on there. And right now, Moon Off the Machine, Manji and Chris are getting you ready for the NFL season on the Propcast. They got episodes dedicated to season-long props and the awards market. Plus, check out CJ Sullivan, also known as Scumbagger Vance, and his road to $10 million on the Bottom Line Bombs. Tune in wherever you get your podcasts or the SGPN app. All right, I'm going to bring in my guests now, and I'm going to let them do a little intro on themselves. There's 2/3 here from the show Sports Nonsense and Whiskey. And sports, whiskey, I think that we're going to get along just fine. Welcome to the show, Pinky and Caleb. We'll start with you, Pinky. First of all, nickname, I assume, Pinky. I'm assuming your real name's not Pinky.
Well, it's not, but my last name is Pinkerton, so it's pretty close.
Okay.
That's just kind of where it came from. It is actually a family name. My grandma was called Pinky when she was at the truck station. My son is called Pinky at work. He's called Pinky Jr. around my friends. So it's like we just kind of carried on. At work, I'm Pinky. I've got like my own brand. And it's just a way for people. Nobody forgets your name when you're named something like that. You know, my regular name's Aaron. I like it. It's a good name. It's number one in most books or most phone books, right? In your phone, Aaron is number one. But Pinky still, nobody forgets a Pinky. So
for sure. So, well, welcome to the show and welcome, Caleb. How you doing, Caleb? Oh, you're on mute, Caleb.
Yep. Sorry about that. Wanted to make sure I didn't say anything while the intro was going on. So my apologies, ladies and gentlemen. But good. Appreciate you having us on. Ready to talk some football and whatever else pops up. It's kind of our thing. So a lot of people think we're sports nonsense and whiskey, and it's three separate things because we will go off on tangents that have nothing to do with sports or whiskey. Quite often we say we're closet nerds in the sense that we love the comic books and the movies and the sci-fi and all that stuff too. So just kind of depends on how we're feeling, where the trail kind of winds at times.
I like it. You don't want to box yourselves into just sports, especially when you can talk about other fun stuff in life. Before we talk football, what are you guys drinking? I think I saw you both had a drink of whiskey. We'll start with you, Pinky.
I've got some Buchanan's Scotch Pineapple. I get this at Sam's Club for $27.
Nice.
It's fantastic straight up. It's fantastic with some soda water. Makes it a little spritzer.
Nice.
It's awesome. So I'm glad that you're drinking Breckenridge Orange. I love Breckenridge Orange, and I do think orange is better than the blue one. So you did get the right one.
Nice. Yeah, I have not had the blue one. But yeah, this is a very easy drinker. That's one of the things I love about it. I mean, it's got flavor, but it's also got that smoothness. It goes well and everything. So yeah, how about you, Caleb? What do you got over there?
Just some standard Maker's Mark. I've had a lot of Buffalo Trace recently, and I'm down to my last 2 bottles. And I made a bet with my co-host over here that on who's going to be the starting quarterback for the Steelers this season, day one. And I might owe him a bottle here soon, unfortunately. So I'm drinking some of the back of the cabinet stuff right now, and kind of waiting to see what I'm going to have to give up.
Fair enough. Nothing wrong with Woodford. So I think I saw a short. You guys can find these guys at Sports Nonsense Whiskey. They're on YouTube. They're on Twitter at Nonsense Whiskey. Caleb, you think Justin Fields, correct?
Correct. I do.
Okay, I thought so. And Pinky, you're leaning Russell Wilson?
Yeah, I just they gave I think Mike Tomlin gave him his word. You're the starter at least day one. I feel like he's going to honor that, and it'll be performance-based from there. I do think Justin Fields will probably get a crack at that job at some point throughout the season. I just think day one, Tomlin's a man of his word, and he's going to give him that shot day one.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. I can see an argument for both of them. As a Bears fan who I really wanted them to keep Fields, to be honest. I thought that he was just starting to hit that development of where he was ascending and getting better. And with the first pick in the draft, could have brought in a guy like Marvin Harrison and had DJ Moore, Marvin Harrison, and Keenan Allen, and really been ready to roll. But now I got to get behind Caleb Williams. I'm trying to wrap my head around it. I'm trying to be positive because I was not a huge fan, but you got to do what you got to do. Shout out to the chat. Mike says, hi, what's up, Mike? Should we jump right into quarterbacks in this division?
It's your show, baby. You let us know where you want to go.
Absolutely. Right, we're along for the ride, my guy.
I'm sad Miranda's not here. She's much better looking than I am, but I'll try to do the best to replace her right now.
Fair enough. Yeah, let's do a brief overview of the quarterbacks, and then we'll kind of dive into them. So we got Patrick Mahomes. Obviously, everybody knows him. Finished QB8 last year, and almost felt like it was a bit of a down year. And when your down year can finish QB8 in fantasy football, that's not so bad. He's going to ADP QB3 and $24. Justin Herbert, who, I mean, has kind of lost everything as far as his targets. He's got a new coach who is a good coach, don't get me wrong, but it's going to be a big year of questions. He finished QB17 after missing 4 games, being drafted as QB15 and only going for $4. And then the Raiders and Broncos, I think Gardner Minshew is going to start for the Raiders. I'm not sure. I want to get your guys' opinion, but he's going as QB33 and for $1. Then the Broncos, I'm going to let you guys weigh in on who you think's going to start there. But let's talk about Patrick Mahomes. Revamped offense, more targets. They brought in Hollywood Brown. They drafted Xavier Worthy, who, I know there's questions about his size and his hands, but he's a speedy guy that I think they're going to be able to utilize properly. What are you feeling on Patrick Mahomes? Well, is he going to bounce back into that top 5?
So last year was check down mode. This year he's going back to God mode.
All right.
Like he's gonna go back to where he was. They're gonna throw the ball downfield. When you've got guys who are blazing fast like Hollywood Brown and Worthy, the middle of the field is like Travis Kelce's heaven, and he'll be there all day. And whenever Rashee Rice gets back from whatever he's going to be in, he's going to be open all day too, because they used him a lot in the slot too. I just don't see any way that they're not putting up, 28 plus points a game this year.
For sure. What do you think, Caleb?
Yeah, I mean, Pinky and I have talked about this quite a few times where what they've put together there, the fact that it was even allowed and people around the league made choices that allowed the Chiefs to make the choices they have and put that offense back together, basically. I know Rashee Rice is going to be suspended. How long? Maybe 4 games is kind of seems to be the going rate in the NFL these days for an offense that isn't murder. So we'll see what happens there. But I feel like he was on a very steep upward trajectory at the end of last season in the playoffs. So I was really excited to see what he was going to do going into the season. So you put 2 burners around him and Travis Kelce. He'll be able to come back and not be the focal point of the other defense as a number 1 wide receiver, if you will. And so he's going to be able to eat as well. Pacheco is I think only going to continue to thrive. I don't think he's a fantasy darling, if you will, in the sense that you're looking at him as one of your top running backs. Mm-hmm. If you like that 0 running back strategy and you steal him late somehow, which shouldn't happen, but if you did, congratulations, because he's going to go over 1,000 yards, and I think he's going to hover right around 10 touchdowns on the ground as well. So, and then, they've got a myriad of other backs that they can throw to out of the backfield as well. So I'm with Pinky. I agree. Patrick Mahomes is going to eat this year. Wouldn't be surprised to see him as QB1 in fantasy at the end of the season by any means, but I think top 3 is very expected.
Yeah, absolutely. I think if he's there, I mean, from what I've been seeing, Josh Allen has been going number 1. And then usually it's Jalen Hurts or Lamar, and then Lamar, Jalen Hurts, and then Patrick Mahomes. I'm perfectly comfortable taking him somewhere in that top 5 range. He can run. He doesn't run as much as those guys, but he can run when he needs to. So, I mean, I can make an argument to draft him at any place. Plus, he's a better arm than any of those guys. Maybe not stronger than Josh Allen, but definitely smarter arm. I feel like smarter IQ. Yeah, and as far as Rashee Rice, I mean, it's not like he was gambling. So, I mean, he's not going to be out a year, right? It seems like those strong punishments are for either murder or gambling.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Justin Herbert going as QB 15 right now, $4 in auction. And, he's got a new offense. He lost Keenan Allen, lost Mike Williams, lost Gerald Everett, lost Austin Eckler. In comes Jim Harbaugh. How are we feeling about him? Do you guys think he's going to have success? Is this a prove it year for Herbert? Does he have to put up good numbers this year, or they're going to be looking somewhere else?
Well, I guess it depends on how we value success. Fantasy wise, I don't think he's going to be amazing, fantasy wise, but I think they'll win more games, so he'll have success in the win column, but not maybe in the fantasy column.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily agree. Actually, I think people are forgetting how good Harbaugh is as a coach, and what he was working with last time, and the numbers that quarterback was putting up, Colin Kaepernick. While he obviously runs a lot more than Justin Herbert, he was not a great thrower of the football and still had solid throwing statistics on the back end of those running numbers. So I think what Justin Herbert can do throwing the ball, I know everybody thinks Jim Harbaugh run first, and I think there'll be a lot more running than they ever have been. But that opens up a passing game, and I believe Justin Herbert is a top 5 talent in this league. And with that kind of talent and a solid running game opening up all those holes for your wide receivers to fill, I actually think you see kind of a resurgence of Justin Herbert this year.
See, I would call that, we went to the Fantasy Football Expo last year. I would call that a spicy take, which means you would have to take a shot of rye whiskey for the rye spice right now. I do think he's gonna do okay, but he's not somebody I'm targeting in fantasy football drafts. I'm just not trusting it. The way they gutted that offense, I do trust that Harbaugh knows what he's doing. He is a very good coach. There's no doubt about that. I think they take a step back this year before they take their step forward. But that's just my opinion. I'm happy to let Herbert go in fantasy football drafts. Quick shout out to the chat. Jamie checking in. What's up? No Miranda today. She's still on the phone. I can hear her in her office with her boss and boss's boss. No, she's not in trouble. Just trying to fix some work problems. And he sees that I did not get the orange shirt memo. So I could have wore some Bears orange, but I couldn't bring myself to wear Broncos orange. So
Bears
yeah,
orange
that's
is good.
fair. That's fair. I have a question for you, sir.
yeah.
How far would you need Justin Herbert to fall for him to then be on your radar? Because I have this feeling that he is going to be one of those guys that you could actually see fall a lot in fantasy drafts this year, because everybody's going to be thinking this run first offense and things of that nature, gutted the offense. Where would you then feel comfortable with him?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think once you get closer to that QB 20 spot, that's where I'm feeling for him, because I don't think he's going to do that great. He's going 15 right now. That's probably a fair price. I'm just personally staying away. Yeah, he's important in that offense, but Harbaugh is a guy that Harbaugh plays by Harbaugh's rules. So if he's not feeling it, I know they don't have a lot of depth there, but I could see him saying like, hey, let's see what else we got. This isn't working. And it seems like every year, kind of some excuses of them not winning were, well, it's not Justin Herbert's fault. Well, it's somebody's fault. So, yeah,
Pinky, what do you always say? What do you always say about those guys out on the coast there?
Oh, the Chargers know how to charge her.
Exactly. Yeah,
but he did help in that, and he had moments in fourth quarters that he didn't do himself any favors.
Yeah, for sure. And finishing QB 17, he had one of the most productive wide receivers in fantasy football in Keenan Allen. Keenan Allen had a great year last year. I know Mike Williams went down and Keenan Allen was really the only option, but I just expect more from somebody that's got a stud wide receiver like that, albeit he is a little bit older. Let's switch to the Raiders. I'm curious to get your guys' opinion. Let's start with, are you targeting any of these guys in fantasy football, and who do you think wins the starting job? We'll start with you, Pinky.
Well, no Raiders on my roster, most likely. Again, depending on value, but
yeah,
I do see Gardner Minshew winning that job. Aiden O'Connell played okay. I mean, he was okay. I don't think he's better than Gardner. Gardner at least has been in it. Colts almost made the playoffs last year. I think it went down to week 18 to make that between the Texans and the Colts. So he almost had that Colts team. And you could argue that the Raiders have better, skill position players than the Colts in some places. Mm-hmm. So I just think Gardner Minshew is going to get that job.
Caleb, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Gardner Minshew is Baker Mayfield, if just given the opportunity to just start. And I think he's proven that time and again. So I can't imagine a world where Aiden O'Connell is playing for them if, Minshew Mania is rolling and alive and well. I'll point this out. I fully believe if I was an Aiden O'Connell fan, Pinky wouldn't have said he played okay. He would have said he was trash. So I want you to know Pinky's true barometer, everybody, as we move forward, because he said very nice things about Aiden O'Connell that he does not believe. But we do both really like Minshew, and I think they've got some weapons there. I think Zamir White is going to be, a little underrated.
Mm-hmm.
And then Devontae Adams is out there. And so you give Minshew a true number one to throw to and a competent coaching staff, which I believe Pierce definitely has. I think Minshew can go out there and do some things. So I'm actually might be a little blasphemous as a Broncos fan, but I'm actually a little excited to go watch him play next year, regardless that it's for the Raiders.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. I'm on the Minshew mania train here. He's got a much better mustache than Aiden O'Connell. Nobody can disagree with that.
Yeah, no doubt.
And this is a guy that said that he wasn't going to take a shit because he doesn't believe in being number two. So, he's ready to compete. He's ready to win that job. And yeah, you bring up a good point. He's got Devontae Adams. He's got Jacoby Myers, who I thought had some really nice flashes last year. Zamir White, I don't know if you saw the recent photos, but that dude's biceps look twice as large than last year. I mean, he's ready to ball out. So yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what they do there. Now let's talk about the Broncos, because they have a 3-person, I guess, job here that they're battling it out. Right before we went live, I was told that Caleb's a little more negative on the Broncos here. So I want to start with him. Who's winning this job?
I'll be very surprised if it's not Bo Nix. I know Sean Payton wants to win, and so Stidham is an option, but I think he's going to roll Nix out there from the start and see what he can really do, knowing that Stidham can always come in and play competently. Zach Wilson, I'll be surprised if he's on the roster by the time the season starts. So it's Bo Nix's job to lose after the season starts, depending on his play and how quickly he can adjust from the college game to the NFL game. I think he's going to be able to do that enough to keep the job the whole season. I'm still a little torn on the personnel around him and what they're capable of. I'm actually a big Cortland Sutton guy, and I think a year removed finally from the ACL and full season, he'll look a little bit more dynamic. I think Troy Franklin getting drafted is one of the most underrated picks in the draft. I mean, they played college together, for goodness sakes, and it was his number one dude, and now you're bringing him in to play the second, third option. So, and then, a myriad of other pieces that they still have, that there's still enough flashes of potential to keep them around and see what's possible. I think he's going to struggle like all rookies do. I think he's going to struggle because the personnel isn't necessarily great. I'm not a big Sean Payton guy. I'm still very much on the fence of if he was even the right decision to be the head coach. I think he's the right guy in the sense that he'll right the ship and bring back a culture to an organization that was completely dysfunctional.
Sure.
I don't know if he's the right man to be offering the tutelage to a rookie QB and developing him within the new NFL, if you will. So that's where, and I've been, open about the fact that I'm not a big Sean Payton guy in that sense, and I'm still on the fence of what he's capable of as a head coach in today's NFL. I think the fit, though, with him and Bo Nix are arguably perfect. And anybody thinking the Broncos reached on that pick, I don't think quite understood the fit and how good Bo Nix was in college. So when he had a competent head coach and offensive coordinator around him, which he didn't have at Auburn, and that's been well documented about how dysfunctional the Auburn situation was, goes to Oregon with Lanning and that system, and he shined like everybody thought he would as a 4-star recruit coming out of high school. So it's not like this guy doesn't have a pedigree to back up the things he's done up to this point. So I actually think Pinky and I agree on this subject where he's going to have some rookie struggles. He'll be the starter all year. And kind of Russ Wilson numbers from last year is I think we're both kind of in agreement that that's kind of the area that he falls in this year, which, I mean, for a rookie is really good. But the team as a whole will struggle, and that will be some of his doing.
Yeah. What would you like to add, Pinky?
Well, I'm just going to throw out there, if anybody listens to the national media or is on Twitter, Facebook, wherever you get your sports stuff, that Zach Wilson nonsense is media bullshit. It is nonsense. He's looked horrible. He's looked better in, organized team activities, but he's looked the third quarterback. He's not had any good days. Sean Payton rotated all three through OTAs. They all, like, one day it was Wilson, one day it was Stidham, one day it was Nix. Like, they all rotated throughout all of the OTAs, and Wilson was the worst one of all of them. So throw that out. If you're even commenting or thinking about that, it's dumb. It's not happening. Bo Nix is going to start day one, unless Sean Payton's like, well, we play the Seahawks and the Steelers week 1 and 2. Let's wait till after that, and then we'll bring him in. But I would expect throughout training camp, it's going to be neck and neck. And if it's neck and neck, you might as well put the rookie in. But he will have some struggles based on personnel. He'll also have struggles if Sean Payton gets a little too cute. At the moment, the identity of this football team is run the football. We run the football and we play good defense. We won more games last year than we should have won.
Yeah,
it was based on that. So if they continue with that philosophy and don't get too cute, that'll probably be the same thing that happens.
Yeah, I like it. And I saw people, Broncos fans included, that when they selected Bo Nix, they were kind of kicking around like, why and everything. I mean, this is a guy, he did lead the league in passing completion percentage and touchdowns. I know the offense is built to kind of be an easier offense that he was in, but I still think he is a guy that can step in and have success in the NFL. I didn't think it was a bad pick, like I saw some people say. Nick Fortune in the chat saying he loves the point of view you have. Being a Broncos fan has to be tough. Nick is a 49ers fan, so he knows about tough years. It's okay. And my mama checking in, much like being a Bears fan, we suffer because they hype us up and then let us down, which is very true. We're going to talk about the running backs in just a second here, but first I got to let everybody know that we're brought to you by Underdog Fantasy. Pick 8 is now live, and you can create entries with up to 8 picks, and Underdog will automatically double flex entries so you can miss up to 2 picks and still win your entry. With more picks to make and extra ways to win, the excitement is higher than ever. The best part, you can win up to 325 times your original amount. That's a lot of cash. You can now use specials and boosts on all flexed entries. Don't miss out on your chance to try it out before it's gone. Plus, if you're already a user, deposit between now and, UFC 303 already happened, so I'm going to stop reading that part. But I will tell you that on our socials, we're releasing CFL picks because I love all football, not just NFL. Also love the Canadian Football League. And to release some picks on that, just go sign up with promo code OFFSGPN to claim your special pick and a first-time deposit offer up to $250 in bonus cash. UnderdogFantasy.com, promo code OFFSGPN. We're also brought to you by Circa Survivor and the Circa Millions. Circa Sports is back with Circa Survivor and Circa Millions, giving away $16 million in guaranteed prizes. Of course, Circa contests have no rake. The Circa Millions pick 5 NFL teams against the spread each week and compete for $6 million, or you can survive the NFL gauntlet to claim the $10 million prize. Sign up in person at Circa Sports between now and September 7th and use proxy to play from anywhere. We even have a deal with footballcontestproxy.com to save you $50 with promo code SGP. And if you don't have a trip booked for Las Vegas yet, no worries. The Ultimate Contest Weekend has a great time to go out. You can hang out with Ryan and Sean and enjoy some of the open bar events. I love me an open bar. At the greatest sports book in the world, August 22nd through the 24th.
Circa's awesome. Gotta get to Circa.
I have not been there, but every time I hear somebody that has gone to Vegas, they say that's the place to go.
Yeah, I want to go like an opening weekend of football and go out there and hang out for the whole weekend. Saturday in the pool watching college football, Sunday in the pool watching NFL football. And it's still warm enough to do that. That's my goal.
Yeah, we hope to make it out there eventually. Week 1, the guys that started the Sports Gambling Podcast Network, Sean and Ryan, they're usually there week 1 as well. So if you're out there, they'll be around the Circa. They have a good partnership with them. Hit them up, and just ask them to buy you a drink. I bet they will. So I was on Old Fashioned Football. You want to get me a whiskey, and I'll bet they'll do it. Let's talk about these running backs. There's a lot of questions around some of these teams, but we'll start with the Chiefs. I know, Caleb, you already kind of hit on Isaiah Pacheco and how he's going to have a good season. He finished RB16 last year. He's going as RB11 and $30 in auction leagues. If you think he's going to get that RB11, I feel like $30 is a steal. Running backs tend to go for a high price. I always struggle on Chiefs running backs because it seems like even when one guy pops and has a great year, they don't care. They go with the hot hand. I mean, we saw Clyde Edwards-Helaire looked really good for a while, and then they're like, yeah, he's a nobody now. So I have trouble sticking with Chiefs running backs or drafting them. He does seem like he's a better player, but can we trust him? RB11 seems high to me. Pinky, we'll start with you. What do you think? I saw you shaking your head no.
I don't know if I don't know if it's per se that can you trust Isaiah Pacheco? Can you trust Andy Reid to run the football? And now that they've got these weapons and they've already been talking about in their OTAs of giving Mahomes shit about not throwing the ball down the field, and they're egging him on to go deep. I think it's going to be normal Andy Reid of just like, well, if I can scheme all these guys open and get these big plays, I don't think he's going to want to run the ball as much. I think they'll run the ball when they need to, and they'll probably be effective at it. But I don't know if it's going to be where he's going to have those kind of numbers that you want to pay $30 for.
Sure. Caleb, I think you're a little bit higher on him. What do you think?
I am to an extent. I feel like I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth here, so I apologize. Because in fantasy, I think he's being overvalued a little bit. There's people felt like he was going to blow up a little bit last year, and he was solid, but he didn't really pop off.
Yeah.
And I think last year is kind of about his ceiling. So, like I said earlier, I think 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns would be his max, is what you'd hope for. And he's not going to do a lot in the passing game. I know he's developing that a little bit more, but it's not just that he's not much of a pass catcher. It's that they have all those other weapons that Mahomes throws to, and he dances around. He doesn't dump it off. He creates time for those plays to develop even longer. Let his wide receivers, Travis Kelce specifically, do their thing. Paint some kind of amazing picture on the back end and complete a pass. So you lose points in that aspect as well. While he might be a really good real life running back, especially for what they want to do in the system, and him running so violently, which softens up the middle of that field and again creates up more space. Everything Andy Reid does has a purpose. I'm not as high on him as fantasy as I am in real life for Patrick Mahomes as a quarterback and what he brings to him. Sure. So I do side with Pinky. Cheers. We're agreeing a lot this evening. That doesn't happen, ladies and gentlemen. So we apologize if you were looking for a little bit more chaos. But I'm actually interested to see the way Pacheco runs. I feel like he's going to miss a game or two. Clyde Edwards-Helaire is strictly there as a what if everything goes to hell in a handbasket, we can use you still. They brought in Keontae Ingram, who I always was kind of curious about down in Arizona, but with what they had in front of him, he wasn't going to get the playing time. If Pacheco needs some spells or he misses any time, I feel like he can do the exact same kind of ground and pound thing that Pacheco does. So as somebody, a name kind of keep in the back of your head, if Pacheco goes down, a flyer for a couple weeks if you need one, I could see him filling that Pacheco role very well. But I'm not targeting any of the Chiefs running backs by any means.
Yeah, definitely a good name to keep an eye on in waivers. I honestly, I swear by the fact that fantasy football leagues are won by waivers and trades, not by your draft. You can lose your league by your draft if you have a terrible draft, but I don't think you can win it. I think you win it by making the subtractions, additions that you need to throughout the season. I'm with you guys here. RB, a top 12 RB. I just don't see him getting that. This is an offense that passes the ball like crazy. This is an offense that's added weapons of people that are going to get the ball. They also added the rugby player. I'm blanking on his name, but I feel like they're going to give him some carries as well. So yeah, I think this is a running back room to kind of avoid, unless, like you said, Pacheco does go down and you can get a flyer on Ingram who can step in there. The next running back room is a little more, I guess, complex or convoluted. The Chargers brought in the Ravens running backs. Harbaugh got his brother's running backs, J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards. Neither one has had great success staying healthy, though Gus Edwards did finish RB20 last year. He's going as RB41 this year, and only $8. He had 2 top 5 finishes, which I think is important to show that like he can pop off. I'm curious if you guys are buying into either one of these guys, or maybe you're waiting until one of the last rounds, taking a flyer on a guy like Kamani Vidal, who led 2024 RB class in rushing attempts, rushing yards, and missed tackles forced. He's kind of a guy that might fit that Harbaugh mold. What do you guys think on the Chargers running back room here? Caleb?
Okay. Pinky's already knows what I'm going to say, so he's just going to sit back and smile and laugh. I'm a huge J.K. Dobbins guy, and I believe the talent is there to be a top 3 running back in the league. But he's got that huge injury thing that keeps plaguing him year in and year out. He's come out and said he's fully healthy. That's all going to be behind him. If you truly believe that's the case, this dude's a steal wherever he's drafted. It's a giant if, though, because he's either not healthy or he's going to get injured within the first 5 plays of the game of week 1 and then out for the season. I do believe, though, talent-wise, he is a top 3 talent running back. I'm not as strong feeling on that now after another knee injury. And now that he's had, this is number 3. So I'm struggling with it this year, but I have a feeling I'm going to own quite a few J.K. Dobbins shares by the end of fantasy drafts going into the season. I think Gus Edwards is a solid guy. I think he can give you what you need from the run game to keep the offense moving. He's not going to be spectacular, but he's not going to lose games for you. I love that you brought up Vidal, though, because if J.K. Dobbins isn't the guy, I actually think Edwards takes a back seat to Vidal. And I think he runs with that job by week 3 or 4. And you could see him be fairly explosive, actually, in a Jim Harbaugh-led rush scheme. So that's kind of where I stand on those guys.
All right. How about you, Pinky?
Well, I think it's kind of the tale of 2 strategies. If you are going, you've got 3 good running backs and you hold off on drafting a 4th one for a little while, J.K. Dobbins is probably a guy to put there, and he could be a steady 4th and maybe even better for you in the stretch if he is healthy. If you go 0 running backs and you're down, a little bit, Gus Edwards is probably a good 1 or 2 to have if you're running that strategy. I think he's going to give you a good floor every week. He definitely gets goal line stuff, so he's going to get the touchdowns. That's where a lot of his points come from. He's just kind of a plotter, but he's solid, and that's what Harbaugh is going to use, a solid guy. He got hurt last year, but injuries haven't been a huge concern for Edwards over the long run. So I think it's just kind of where you want a good floor. Edwards is your guy. If you want that kind of boom potential of a guy you can draft late that could end up being a top 10 running back, Dobbins would probably be your guy. Vidal is, definitely a stash guy. I think with Edwards and Dobbins ahead of them, if they're both healthy, he's not getting run until the second half of the season.
Yeah, and a huge dynasty pickup. I've been adding him in almost all my dynasty leagues. I just feel like I've been burned by these guys. I don't remember if it was 2 or 3 years ago that I kept J.K. Dobbins. He got hurt in preseason or in training camp, and I thought, that's all right. Gus Bus will be the guy. I'm going to draft him. And then he got hurt. So it's, and everybody says Gus Bus. His real name is Augustus. So Augustus Bustus. Maybe he's a bust more often than not. That's just kind of how I feel about him sometimes. It's I hate to say it because I think he's got the talent, but I just can't trust those guys anymore. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that backfield plays out. The Raiders seem to be committed to Zamir White. They let Josh Jacobs go. So he gets his chance to start. We talked about already that he showed up looking huge and has been hitting the weight room, apparently. Whether that helps his game, we'll see. But what do you guys think? Caleb, I think you said that you're big on Zamir White.
Big might be a slight stretch, but I do think he could be a bit of a steal in fantasy drafts because he is going a little bit later. And I could see him having Rachaad White, a guy we just talked about the other night, type of potential. Rachaad White is not going to do anything spectacular down in Tampa, but I bet you he ends the season over 1,000 yards and hovering right around those 10 touchdowns.
He gets the job done.
Yeah, I think Zamir White does this a very similar thing for the Raiders. What I've seen from him in his a handful of touches here and there, I've seen a capable running back. And if the offense is capable, which is what I was seeing under Pierce when he took over with Aiden O'Connell, and I think Minshew's better than O'Connell, then I have got to believe that Zamir White, given the opportunity to be the RB1, which they've come out and said, and they've done nothing to disprove it, he's going to get the bell cow carries, would not be a steal as your third running back. Or if you go 0 running back, even your first running back in those situations and make a lot of people happy come the end of the year. I could easily see that. So that is a name that I could easily see myself having some shares of, depending on where he falls. Because I feel like there's a good chance that we might actually see his name rise up the boards from where we are right now as training camp progresses and things of that nature, and you get a little bit more news about him coming in. I could see him jumping a couple more rounds up, and then you start getting into a situation where how much do you truly believe in him? He jumps, 2 rounds, I could still see myself in very much. 3 rounds, then you got to start looking at, third running back, third wide receiver type thing, and that becomes a different question because of the depth of talent at wide receiver overall in the league. So that would be a little bit more of a conversation, but I think he can high ceiling, low end RB1 numbers, low floor. He's going to hover somewhere around running back 25 because the offense just completely flopped and they're giving 1,000 guys chances. So there's a wide range there depending on how that team plays, and do they continue to play well for Pierce? Is he truly the man for the job? I think that's kind of the thing with the Raiders, is there's a lot of question marks going into the season. So, but I do like Zamir White. I think there's an opportunity here for him. I think he's been slightly underrated, and I think that's why they let Jacobs walk. Yeah.
No, and he's currently going as running back 23, but I can say in drafts I've been in, it seems like he's sneaking below that. So that's getting inflated somewhere from the numbers on Fantasy Pros. I was doing the Scott Fishbowl draft today, and he actually went in the 8th round, which I thought was really good value. If you can pick him up in the 8th round. I thought that was good. Yeah. So I think he is sneaking lower than people think, and he has that opportunity to be a really good fantasy asset. Let's talk about the Broncos, because, you keep hearing all this chatter about Jaleel McLaughlin's the guy. He's going to steal the job. Is this a thing where it's just some smoke, or is it more of where there's smoke, there's fire? I'm a big fan of Javonte Williams. I know he had his injury. He finished RB30 last year. He's being drafted as RB30 this year. We'll start with you this time, Pinky. What do you think?
Well, the fire on McLaughlin is real.
Okay.
Sean Payton loves him. Sean Payton doesn't talk. He doesn't glow about players in most press conferences, and if he does, you listen. Yeah, because that means he really likes the guy. And he talks about McLaughlin a lot. The problem they had last year is when McLaughlin was in the game, he got the ball. There wasn't a surprise.
Right.
So obviously he's got to work on his pass blocking. He's got to work on his routes are okay. He's just got to work on his game overall. If when we're talking fantasy, I'm not touching any Broncos running backs because there's no telling. If you're looking for the guy to stash, it's Audric Estime.
Yeah,
Estime is most likely going to be the goal line guy before the end of the season. I would put good money on it that he's going to be the goal line guy down the stretch. So if you can get him and stash him, that's the guy to probably have. Other than that, Williams, Pirine, McLaughlin, I think they're all going to get touches and basically eat into the fantasy value. So I wouldn't touch any of them.
And McLaughlin is going as RB51. Audric Estime is going as RB64. So, you can get some good value there if you believe in those guys. Caleb, what do you think?
Yeah, I'll diverge from Pinky a little bit here because I think Dynasty especially, go grab McLaughlin now if he's available. Go grab Estime right now if he's available immediately. Because I think Williams has lost a step, unfortunately. And he didn't have much of a step to begin with. He was dynamic, but he couldn't afford to lose any of what he had. I think of it as a throwback name similar to like a Lendell White before he just went crazy, ballooned, and put on all his weight. At USC, that dude was solid. Well, Javonte Williams was a similar type, and then that injury, I think, has zapped him of what he had. Estime reminds me of Jerome Bettis in a way, where he's a giant dude, but very light on his feet. And he doesn't seem to surprise anybody until they meet him in the hole. And if you go watch like his highlight tapes, there's a lot of him making people miss, not just running guys over. So I actually believe that you need to keep an eye on those two names a lot, because I believe by the halfway point in the season, they will be your Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara.
They might be your waiver wire pickups in traditional leagues.
McLaughlin, I think you might have to draft like last pick overall kind of thing. You might want to stash him right away, depending on your league size and roster construction, all that good stuff. That's a name to keep an eye on as your draft gets closer to those end names where he's sitting, because you might want to just stash him early and just let it know that you're waiting for a while. But could be come playoff time a huge get, and you've already got him on the roster. You don't have to worry about trying to pay on waivers. Estime is probably a guy I would wait for waivers, but I do think those two, that Thunder Lightning situation, that Mark Ingram, Alvin Kamara that Sean Payton had, that he was running down in New Orleans, it's not going to be quite as dynamic because you're talking about a second-year, third-year guy and a rookie. But I think you're going to see similar opportunities, and enough opportunities to where if you have them and you play it right, those are those little things like you were talking about earlier that create league winners. It's not necessarily the draft that wins it for you. It can lose it for sure. Totally agree there. But you've got to make those decisions where you're willing to eat a roster spot because of what it can provide you later or things of that nature. So I think there's a lot of question marks now, but I do believe by the halfway of the season, everything will kind of spread itself out, and you'll see that rookie and the close to rookie come to the top there and start taking a majority of those carries and touches.
Nice. I like it. I've been picking up Audric Estime in a lot of best ball drafts because he's going towards the end of the rounds. And it's like, this is a guy that he's got the talent. He could pop off and really
got a lot of dynasty stock in him.
Nice. I like it. Real quick, before we talk about wide receivers, just want to let everybody know that we're brought to you by Rhythm. If you're betting on player props, then you need to download Rhythm. Rhythm is the go-to sports betting tool that transforms complex data into actionable insights, empowering bettors with smarter data-driven decisions. Unlike other platforms, Rhythm combines advanced predictive analytics with an intuitive user experience, making betting both easy and enjoyable. Rhythm's predictive models were born from the brains of MIT data scientists and quants with over 3 years of data that help you drive you to better AI-backed betting decisions. Claim your 7-day free trial today by going to sportsgamblingpodcast.com/rhythm. That's sportsgamblingpodcast.com/RITHMM. All right. And as they say on our NASCAR gambling podcast hosted by Rod Villagomez and Cody Zeeb, the rest of the show will be commercial free. So it's always good when we've reached that part. Let's talk about these wide receivers. There's kind of a lot to discuss, so we'll kind of hit on them in groupings, I guess. Let's start with the Chiefs. Hollywood Brown, new to the Chiefs. I am big on him. I'm just going to say that right now. I think he's going to really fit into this offense. I think this is the best quarterback he's played with, and they're going to be able to really use the way he stretches the field. He's going as wide receiver 36 and $8. Rashee Rice, he's finished as wide receiver 27 last year. He's going at wide receiver 39. I think a lot of that is probably kind of that uncertainty of if there's a suspension. He's going for a little bit more, though, $9, which is interesting. He's getting drafted in ADP later, but going for more money. And then the rookie Xavier Worthy, who obviously is very, very fast. Can he become a Tyreek Hill type guy? I don't think he has the same hands, but he does have the speed. He's being drafted as wide receiver 43 at $6. What do you guys think about these Chiefs wide receivers, and are you targeting any of them?
I'll go. Hollywood Brown would be the guy that I'd go with this year. If Rice wasn't getting suspended, it's Rice all day. Mahomes definitely found a rhythm with him, knew where he was going to be. He'd get the ball in his hands, and Rice would do the rest. Made a lot of big plays after he got the ball in his hands. So I think Rice would absolutely be that guy. But do you want to draft a guy or pay a guy that's going to be gone for 4, 6, 8 weeks? And then again, by the time you get him back, you could be in a hole already, in some cases. Sure. So Hollywood Brown would be the guy that I would pick. Rookies in Andy Reid's system usually don't produce a lot. I think Rice was he got in more time because everybody else was awful around him. Whereas then I think Worthy, they're going to be able to put Kelsey, Brown, and Rice out there. Worthy, is going to be just like that fun toy that they can use from time to time. I don't think he's going to get tremendous run.
Yeah. What do you think, Caleb?
I actually think Worthy's going to eat into Hollywood more than people are wanting to believe, especially at the start of the season when Rice isn't around and they need a second receiver option. I think Kelsey has a big jump back season for his standards. Last year was very down. So I think the idea actually is to use those weapons to kind of open up the field more for Kelsey than anything else. So what I honestly see from the Chiefs wide receiver core is a bunch of McCole Hardmans on some steroids kind of thing. So you're going to get a little bit more consistency, maybe slightly more elevated numbers, but they're going to eat each other at the same time to where, again, real life football, badass. Going to be really hard to stop. But fantasy football, I'm not touching any of these guys, to be honest with you. And I'll throw out, I still believe that Andy Reid believes in Kadarius Toney enough to where the start of the season, he's going to get some looks. Now, he may only get one series, and the first ball he drops, he's done for the rest of the year. Like that literally might be the very.
I don't think Toney makes it out of camp.
I think I've heard Andy Reid say enough glowing things about him still that I think he's going to stick around and be a fourth option, if you will. And if he could ever figure it out, like the talent is obviously there. If he could just hold on to the ball, he could be their best weapon on offense. And that's what's kind of crazy is the fact that he's done things to make them go out and find other pieces that are scary good. And he's still there as a potential. So I think he will be on the team come week 1. He could be cut after that, possibly. I don't know. But I would not be surprised at all if Andy Reid still has him around and he gets some opportunities to still show that he can play. So there are so many weapons in that wide receiver room for that Kansas City Chief team that I don't think any of them are true, like dogs, top guys, but they're all, Pinky and I have talked about this, that Christian Kirk type. Like they're all just really good receivers. Like they can run routes, they're fast, they have hands outside of Toney. And so you're going to be in a good situation if you're Patrick Mahomes to just sling it all over the field. And I think that is the fantasy issue.
Yeah, Miranda's not here to speak up about this, but I will say that I think it was 2 years ago. Might have been last year. I think it was 2 years ago. She drafted almost every Chiefs wide receiver because they were going cheap and thinking that, like, you know, one of these guys is going to do great. And it kind of played out exactly like you said, Caleb, where they really eat into each other's workload and none of them really pops into like a true fantasy asset. Yeah, they're okay to flex here and there, but just they put up good numbers, just not good enough fantasy football wise. Nick Fortune agreeing with Pinky that Toney's not going to make the wide receiver core. And he also said Worthy is a stash for $1, but he's going for $6 right now because people love the speed. So you can't even get him for $1. And I think in a redraft league, $6 is just too much right now because, yeah, he's going to have gadget plays. Yeah, he might have a game where he puts up a huge play, and so he's got a lot of yards and a touchdown, but I think it's going to be really hit and miss this first year especially. Let's talk about the Raiders wide receivers. Of course, they got Devontae Adams, who, yeah, he's older, but it doesn't seem to matter or hasn't yet. He finished wide receiver 11 last year, going up a spot in ADP this year as wide receiver 10, $29, which does seem like a little bit much for a guy that is getting older. There's questions at the quarterback, but I think he can have success with Gardner Minshew. And then there's Jacoby Myers, who finished as wide receiver 24 last year, dropping all the way to wide receiver 52. Not sure I understand that one because I don't think their quarterback situation has gotten worse necessarily. He's going for $4. I'll let you guys decide who wants to start on this one, but what are we feeling about the Raiders room?
Well, I mean, Devontae Adams is your steady Betty, right? But do you want to pay $29 for him? I don't. There might be other options you want to pay $29 for over Adams, but he's got a good floor every week for you, for the most part, right? And sometimes that's what fantasy is about, just having enough guys that are going to give you just enough every week. I do love the value of Jacoby Myers, and he has a top 5 finish and that was against the Broncos. We saw that firsthand. He was open, and they got him the ball a lot, and he was awesome that game. I think he's got it in him. I think they'll continue to use him more. And I love that value that you're going to get from him. I think you're going to get more value from him than you would technically from where you're going to draft Adams.
If you're a bettor, I think I can't remember if it was DraftKings or FanDuel, but they have a bet in game that you can place of this person to catch a pass next drive. And Jacoby Myers was just money because it seems like he caught one pretty much every single drive. Caleb, how do you feel about these guys?
I actually think Davante Adams is perfectly priced this year, where he's going, because I do think Minshew's better than people are realizing. And I compared him to Baker. I've been a little bit down on Baker on our own cast, and I've had to eat some crow for it. But Baker allowed Godwin and Evans to eat last year. Trey Palmer got a little bit of the action. The offense looks solid. I think Minshew can sling it. And Davante Adams is still one of the top 5 receivers in the game, probably. So I think he is actually going to be better than people think because of what's around him. And I agree with you. I think Jacoby Myers is a steal. I think you're both right on there. You grab him as your 3rd wide receiver, you get him as your 4th, then you're destroying your league. But he is, I kind of always have this golden scale baseline kind of thing for each position. And I look at it with kind of your old school standard scoring PPR. Jacoby Myers would give you like 10 a week, 50 yards, 5 catches minimum. He might give you 50 yards and 10 catches. So, but you were going to get like that baseline 10 plus. And that's exactly what you're looking for. Like Pinky said, from those second half of the draft position fills, you want somebody who you know is going to be able to just produce you some points. They may not blow up, but they're definitely going to produce for you. Jacoby Myers is a steal there for sure. I think Michael Gallup could be a bit of a dark horse here in their receiver room. Not something I'm probably going to look at other than maybe a streamer if I have a bunch of injuries or something week to week in fantasy. But I think it's another boost, him being there as the 3rd wide receiver. And I know we'll talk about tight ends here in a moment, but then they got 2 other tight ends. There's going to be a lot more weapons, I think, on that Raiders offense than people realize or want to give them credit for. That does make, again, going back to Davante, worth his value to me, because I think he can put up those numbers because of everything else that's there to produce as well.
Yeah, and I saw that he recently said that he's quarterback proof, and he's going to prove that. And I know he's older, but I think that does go to saying something as a guy who's a high caliber player. He's got a little bit of a chip on his shoulder saying, you know, I don't need Aaron Rodgers. I don't need Derek Carr slinging it to me. I can play and ball out with anybody. So we'll see how that plays out. Let's talk about the Chargers. I will tell you that in every dynasty draft, as somebody picked Quentin Johnston in front of me, rather than me, I targeted Jordan Addison and Rashee Rice heavily. So every time Quentin Johnston went, I was like, have fun. And he had a really bad year. I don't know if he can bounce back. We'll see. And they got rookie Ladd McConkey, who I think he's a guy that I'm almost targeting in drafts, late in drafts, just because I think he's going to be the guy that gets the number 1 targets. He's going as wide receiver 42. And he's going to be the top target getter, in my opinion. Quentin Johnston going on wide receiver 67. What do you guys think about these guys?
Can I tell a quick story real quick?
Yeah,
Justin?
absolutely.
On Quentin Johnston. I do think that's hilarious. My buddy and I, we go to the NFL draft every year. We're trying to make that a regular thing. So nice. in Kansas City, the year that he got drafted, we're hanging out, and he's a Chiefs fan. I'm a Broncos fan. We've got a Chargers fan right next to us. Cool kid. He's 19, 20, so excited about the draft, so excited about what the Chargers are going to do, and they've got to get a wide receiver. And Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, he's so excited. They draft Quentin Johnston, and I swear this kid was crying. He was so sad. And just watching that heartbreak in that moment, and then to have him be so bad last year. I hope he's better this year, but for having him be so bad last year, it was like, oh, I could just remember that kid. Every time I saw Quentin Johnston drop a pass, I just see that kid crying.
That's hilarious.
I don't see. I don't know if he can get any worse, but
true.
So the arrow's up there. I don't know if there's any Chargers receiver worth even looking at besides McConkey. I do think McConkey is going to be a great possession guy, catches the ball quite a bit. I don't know if he's got a lot of big play capability in him, but sometimes that consistency is all you need, right? McConkey will most likely turn into a guy that's getting you, 10 plus, 15 plus a game, just based on the consistency of the way he runs routes and catches the ball. That goes a long way.
Yeah, for sure. It comes from that Kirby Smart offense where, I mean, they're smart football players. They learn the game well. So I think that'll help him out for sure. What do you think, Caleb?
Theme for me tonight, I guess. I like the real life aspect of this wide receiver room. It's super young. McConkey, Josh Palmer, Quentin Johnston. I think adding DJ Shark was a scary, sneaky addition. And he might actually be somebody who gets picked up off of waivers as the season goes on. He is usually, other than the knee injury he had, he's been a steady guy on a lot of rosters, putting up numbers for a lot of years. So if the Chargers charger like Pinky talks about and the injuries persist like they're known to do in that organization, he could be somebody who gets picked up on waivers pretty quickly. I think maybe this is part of the reason I think between the coach and why I'm high on Herbert as the quarterback is I actually have some faith in the talent in this room. I just don't think they were being coached up with the previous staff.
Yeah.
I think you're actually going to see kind of a similar situation to what we just talked about with the Chiefs. I don't know if anybody's going to necessarily blow up, but you're going to have a lot of guys making plays. McConkey, he's going to catch a lot of balls, but he may not go for a lot of yards or touchdowns. Quentin Johnston may not have a lot of catches, but he might pop off for 2 catches, 60 yards, and a touchdown. Shark might end up as your possession guy. Josh Palmer might go deep like Quentin Johnston. So I think you're going to have a lot of cycling through who blows up each week. And we all know as fantasy players, that's a mind-numbingly brutal game to play.
Just stay away from those guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If you can, absolutely. So McConkey's, I think, the safe pick because of, especially if you're a PPR, which I think everybody does these days, that's the high floor, low ceiling kind of scenario, if you will. He's not going to hurt you. I think there's still some potential there in Quentin Johnston. And that's the one I'm really watching this year because he was a little bit raw coming out of TCU, but you saw the flashes. Everybody saw the potential there. With Harbaugh, with Herbert, everybody's mind right, full off season, all those good things. Can he be the one that, is that second-year wide receiver that takes the big jump kind of thing? And everybody's like, what just happened? So I'm interested to see what he does, but I can't say I'm going to have any shares in any of these guys.
Yeah. And the 4.4 points per game is what he averaged last year. That scares me. But drafting Johnston at wide receiver 67, I mean, you could get a steal there at the very least. Throw him on your bench. And if he doesn't prove it in 2 to 3 weeks, you can move on from him and pick up a guy that is proving it. So
absolutely. I'll throw in, sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. I'll throw in, I feel like a lot of these names we're talking about where I say keep an eye on, we might know by training camp what this is going to look like. You go through a solid training camp, and a lot of these things can kind of play themselves out. Now, by week 1, 2, 3, 4, it can go right back to where people thought it was going to be. We've seen that happen all the time, but you might have some clarity here in another month and have a much better idea. So if you're redraft league, hopefully you guys are smart enough to wait until, that last week of preseason or right after that's done to draft and cram it in before the season starts so you have a much clearer picture of what it looks like.
For sure. So let's switch over to your guys' team, the Broncos. You mentioned that you were a Cortland Sutton fan, Caleb. I'm a big Cortland Sutton guy too. I think, the offense is going to have some growing pains, especially if Bo Nix is the starter. But I think he's a really solid dude. He finished only as wide receiver 35 last year, but he's going as wide receiver 46 this year. I think that's a steal. And Troy Franklin, who's going as wide receiver 73, just kind of an interesting stat here. 2 wide receivers in the nation last year had 1,300 yards and 14 touchdowns in college. Troy Franklin was one of them, being drafted at wide receiver 73. The other was Malik Neighbors, who's being drafted at wide receiver 24. And honestly, I question that quarterback room just as much as the Broncos one. Like, I don't feel any better about drafting Malik Neighbors over Troy Franklin, especially almost 50 spots. So let's hear what you guys think about your wide receiver room and who's going to shine this year.
All right, I'll go. I think, a lot of people say, especially for a rookie quarterback, that tight end is your best friend, your safety valve. I think Troy Franklin is going to end up being Bo Nix's safety valve. Yeah. And I do think Sean Payton is smart enough to game plan that kind of in. Some shorter routes, get the ball in his hands, get Bo Nix into a rhythm, those kinds of things. If you're not a Broncos fan, I don't blame you for thinking Sutton isn't a dude. But I promise you, he is a dude. And I think he shows that this year. They love to target him in the red zone. So First off, that's a big, big ask from any fantasy or number one wide receiver for that matter. He can also go deep. I think he is going to have some of that speed back. And he can run routes and body out similar to a Brandon Marshall from back in the day, who will just kind of turn around, pin you out, get the ball, may not be super flashy. Anquan Bolden, Michael Thomas, for those that want a more familiar, more recent name, a la Sean McVay offense. Sutton can have very similar numbers to Michael Thomas in that offense. Troy Franklin can be the guy that opens up a little bit more space. I like both of those guys and where they're being valued right now. And I think they can be a steal as that third wide receiver, depending on how you want to run it, in a lot of people's lineups.
So I also love Sutton as well. And I've got multiple reasons. He's got a quarterback that can throw over the middle of the field where he can body guys out and catch a ball and move forward. Russ couldn't do that. 2, Sutton is also, when he did make most of his big plays last season, it was when plays were not on schedule. Russ was outside the pocket, and he knows how to move with a quarterback. All he would do is, Russ is rolling that way, I'm going to run that way, and Russ is getting the ball. I think Bo Nix, who has more mobility than people realize, will have that, and I think they'll actually draw plays up that way as well. And then the biggest point, he's in a contract year, really. He's asking for more money. The Broncos are like, nah, man, you got to show me. Like, they're going to force him to play. They're not going to give him more money. So he's in a contract year. He wants to get paid. He saw his buddy Jerry Jeudy get a bunch of money. He wants to get money like that. He's got $2 million guaranteed this year. He wants to get more. He's going to ball out for that reason as well. I do like Troy Franklin a lot. I don't know how much of an impact he'll make as a rookie. The guy that I would still say, and especially if your league gives you, if your league gives you touchdowns for special teams touchdowns, the guy you probably want to add on there, and I would assume he's going for $1 or even nothing if you could bid that in auction, is Marvin Mims. Super late.
Yeah.
Now, Caleb, now I know you may not be listening to Sean Payton's press conferences and all that. He's mentioned him multiple times. He's put it out there that he's got to get the ball in his hands more. He did it. Payton even says, I did a really bad job of getting him involved in the offense.
Cool.
So
Troy
I do
Franklin
think
took his
he's
job.
got that.
Troy Franklin took his job. Like, that's just he took KJ Hamler's job, and now Troy Franklin took his job. That is just what it is, okay?
We shall see. We shall see.
I will say I had far too many shares of Marvin Mims than I want to admit last year at the Fantasy Football Expo. So we had a hot takes table where you give your hot take, you get a drink of whiskey, and we had some different whiskeys there. But one of the guys said that he thought Marvin Mims was going to be a top 10 wide receiver last year.
Give him two shots of whiskey.
That's what we get for listening to Patriots fans. Because I was like, you know what? Maybe he's right. I'm going to pick him up in a lot of drafts, and that didn't pan out. But No, I think, I mean, for Sutton or Troy Franklin, and I can make an argument for Mims. I think he had a really good college career. I think he could,
Sneaky late. You can make a case for Josh Reynolds as well.
Yeah. Yeah, he had some good
flex
games.
option.
Right, yeah. He had some solid games with the Rams. I mean, he's a consistent guy. But
Sutton
as
might
far
be
as
a
Sutton
flex
and
option.
Franklin,
So you're going real low there.
I'm trying to get Sutton or Franklin either in my drafts. I feel like one of those guys is going to, both of them are going to put up enough numbers to make it worth it. So I feel like I'm targeting at least one of them, or just one or the other, rather. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that pans out. I think, Bo Nix, with that familiarity with Troy Franklin, that could go a long way. He's a guy that he already trusts. And then Sutton, I think, he's such a reliable guy. I agree with you guys that there are a lot of non-Bronco fans that will be like, none of the Broncos wide receivers, Sutton, he's not the dude. I think he can be. I've always been a fan of him. So we're going to flip over to tight ends. Before we do, I forgot to ask you guys. I meant to ask like kind of at the intro of the show. So let's just do it here. Let's kind of segment it in between. How'd you guys decide to start the podcast? What brought that all about?
We have a good buddy of ours who we now have dubbed SP for super producer. That's just kind of an inside joke, but a buddy of ours, Aaron, so happens. We were all at a fantasy draft together. And after the draft, we always talk shop, kind of like a barbershop kind of thing. And he looked at a couple of us and said he's been thinking about starting like a podcast network. And if we're interested, we could do a sports show first, and he'd help kind of put it together and kind of run it and make sure everything was up to par. And so myself, Pinky, Aaron, and our other buddy, Zach, all got together, and first year and a half, maybe 2 years almost, we just did audio and just kind of recorded, but it was slightly pre-COVID, so we were all hanging out together in one room.
Sure.
And then COVID kind of changed a lot of things, and Pinky and I kind of continued to run with it. And then our buddy Robert came on here recently and joined in, and he's a little bit more heavy on the nonsense side than the sports side. So it's nice to kind of be able to bounce that stuff.
And he's good at football.
Yeah. Football. Yes, he's good at football.
Okay.
So it was kind of a happen chance, just something we kind of always did after, fantasy drafts or when we got together and hung out and stuff, and something our buddy had been thinking about. And so we decided to finally jump on and run with it and see what happens.
Nice.
With a married man with multiple kids, it gives us a night to spend some time hanging out with one of our best friends, drinking whiskey, talking crap. And thankfully they give us that time to do that every week. So
yeah, it's a lot easier to sit here and spew all my stuff to Pinky than try to write it down with my thumbs. So that was a win-win for me.
Very cool. Did you guys meet through fantasy football, or did you know each other before then?
Work. We met at USAA. That's where I work, and Caleb used to work there, and that's where we met. My wife actually went to high school with him, and when I invited him over to our house for the first time to watch a Broncos game, he walked in the house, and my wife was like, "Why is Caleb what? What's going on?" I was like, "Oh yeah, this is my buddy Caleb. I told you he was coming over." Yeah, I know Caleb. I went to high school with him, and so it was pretty funny.
That's awesome.
Good times.
Very cool. Yeah, I meant to ask that at the beginning, but I completely forgot it. But yeah, that's cool. Yeah, right. I'm always interested to see how people start this. I mean, for us, so the fantasy football podcast for SGPN was being run by a guy named Rod Villagomez. I started as a writer with SGPN. He's like, I got to get you on the show. And podcasting was nothing I ever thought of doing. I never thought I would like doing. But I told him, I was like, yeah, okay, I'll give it a try. And this is a guy that he actually had taught some podcast lessons out of college. So he was very good at getting people accustomed to it or making them feel welcome. And I really enjoyed it. And I was sitting outside one day talking with my wife, and I was like, I'd love to start a podcast where I talk fantasy football and whiskey. Those are two of my favorite things. And she's like, you could have an old fashioned with it and call it old fashioned football. And I was like, okay, that's brilliant. Let's do that. And then so I pitched it to the guys that own the SGPN. They said shoot a pilot episode, find a guest though. You need to have somebody to bounce ideas off with. We don't want to just hear you talk to yourself. And it's like, who am I going to find short notice? Well, she's really good at fantasy football. She went undefeated her second season in fantasy football, and she was so new to it that she didn't understand like that was such a huge deal to go completely undefeated. But anyways, I was like, you know what? Why don't we do an episode as a pilot? And then after we submitted that, the one of the main guys, he's like, bro, I hope you don't mind, but she's got to be your co-host. I was like, perfect. I know her schedule, so it works out.
Nice.
Yeah. And yeah, it's been fun. We did the same thing. We started audio, and then, the YouTube video and everything is kind of taking over. They're building in kind of their own podcast player, it sounds like, from talking with somebody behind the scenes. So YouTube's just becoming more and more important. And so we decided to go video eventually as well. And here we are. So it's a lot of fun to just talk football.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's been fun. We got to have you guys back. I think I found you guys by, I every now and then I'll type in like football whiskey or sports whiskey to kind of find like-minded things. And I think that's how I found you guys. I was like, oh, we're going to get along with these guys.
We have similar ideas. So
yeah, exactly.
And Miranda has you guys do have a good dynamic on the show. So they made the right choice.
Thank you. You guys do too. I like listening to you guys. It's a lot of fun. Let's jump over to tight ends. I don't know if we need to cover
by Miranda.
Yep, exactly. I'll let you guys decide if there's some that we need to talk about. I mean, there's obviously two. First one, Travis Kelce, who finished as tight end 3 last year. Top 5 finishes. He had 5. All were in the first half of the season. That concerns me a little bit. Him getting older concerns me a little bit, but it's still Travis Kelce. I mean, can you really fade him until he shows that you should fade him? Despite the fact that he's touring Europe and getting on stage with T-Swift, he's still going to perform at a very high level. Being drafted as tight end 2 for $29. Is drafting him, if he's there, a no-brainer?
Well, you're talking to two guys who normally fade tight ends, so you're probably not talking to the right guys. Travis Kelce normally goes high with typically good results for you, but he is 34, 35. He did slow down a little bit last year. He did get nicked up a few times, which I think caused some of the regression a little bit. I would expect that he's going to be open a lot this year, but I am still wondering about that. I just think there's going to be situations where maybe he's dinged up. You focus on him. He's older. I mean, tight ends don't. I mean, Antonio Gates was a shell of himself by the time he got done playing. I think that was at like 35, 36. Kelce's in much better shape, but you're gambling. Yeah. And I don't know if I want to gamble. Is he going to be the stud that he's always been, or is that downturn going to keep happening?
Sure. Caleb?
Yeah, I think it's fair value for Kelce because I do think he has a bounce back year. Like I said earlier, I think that whole Chiefs offense is going to roll. But for someone like myself who is like a zero tight end strategist, if you will, I have a different mindset when it comes to roster construction. I think there's better value overall on the board usually than taking Kelce, in the second round or at $29 or things of that nature. Again, it's that real life fantasy football kind of stuff. I don't know that he produces enough to, you're talking about taking him over your first running back, maybe your second running back or your first wide receiver. And those are decisions that are kind of hard to make when you're looking at a tight end. So I think he's going to have a really solid year, a bounce back year, but it's not my cup of tea, if you will, to go that high on a tight end. I think, cheers, my guy. I think opening it up, I think the only other situation that's worth talking about is out in Vegas with the Raiders, and Brock Bowers obviously coming in as an insane talent, and they drafted Mayer the year before, who I think is also a really good tight end. And I've talked to Pinky about this a lot. Pinky and I do both agree that we're trenches guys We like pounding the ball. We like a good run game. We like to see your tight ends being able to block and catch. Bowers and Mayer can both do that.
Yeah.
I'm still waiting for an offense in the NFL to go true, correct me if I'm wrong, but 12 personnel,
Yeah.
where you run those 2 tight ends as your base offense all the time. When you have that kind of talent at those positions, don't sub them out. Put them both out there. Let them block with your run game. Let them both go out, spread out wide, put them in the slot, put them on the line. I think there's too much talent there to not use. And I think that's a situation where maybe neither one's fantasy relevant per se, but man, they're both going to be really dangerous if you do that, I feel like. And that to me is a much more interesting situation. In fact, we talked about it as it's one of the situations where, and a lot of Broncos faithful that listen to us were not happy with me, but it's one of the situations I'm really excited to watch. Granted, I know they're on the Raiders, but I think if you run both of them out there, you could see some really special things from not just them, but that offense as a whole because of what it opens up. So I really like what those 2 guys could do.
Yeah. As far as Travis Kelce, Miranda's going to be kind of shocked when we release our top 12 lists because he is not going to make the top 5 on mine. I agree with you guys that I don't think
this man some whiskey. Give this man some whiskey. That's a hot take.
I think, we mentioned that he did see a little bit of a slowdown and got banged up, and he is getting older. I still think he's extremely talented, but with them adding more weapons, more options that are reliable, I feel like for Patrick Mahomes and for him getting older and starting to slow down, I just don't think he's going to be one of those. I think he'll be top 10 still, just not top 5. And then, Brock Bowers, huge fan of him. We got a good buddy who's a Georgia fan who said that, like, he's going to be the do-it-all guy because he comes from that Kirby Smart offense. He can block. He's not coming off the field. And he's got all the intangibles you want. Now, in fantasy football, you used to avoid rookie tight ends. I feel like we've started to break that mold, right? Kyle Pitts did have 1,000 yards his rookie season. Sam Laporta was on fire last season and finished his tight end 1.
Fantasy championship.
There you go. I love it. Iowa tight ends, I mean, you can't go wrong with them, but Georgia tight ends too. I think they're coached very well. I think I thought the Raiders was an interesting landing spot for him, but if they utilize him right, he's going to be a hell of a player for them.
So that Quentin Johnston story, same thing with the Raiders this year. I was in Detroit, and when they announced that, the Raiders fan right next to me, we actually had a conversation because I was like, "F the Raiders," and then he was like, "Well, wait a minute, man," and so we were chatting, and then they made that pick, and he was just like, "Wait, what are we doing?
Yeah,
we already have Michael Mayer. What are we doing?" And I was like, Brock Bowers is really awesome, though, man. Like, I mean, you probably don't really need him. It's kind of a luxury pick, but if you think about it, he's probably the best player on the board. So I really can't. I was like, you really shouldn't be mad at that.
And I don't think they have to box him into just that traditional tight end. He can play out of the slot. He can play outside. He can play all over the field and still have success. So,
well, you could, like Caleb mentioned, you interchange them. Michael Mayer stays in the block. Brock Bowers, goes out into the slot, or you keep them both in the block, or they do a quick chip block, and then they're both ready for a pass, right? You could do a whole lot of different things with them, and Brock Bowers is the guy I'm pretty high on. I've liked him since he's been at Georgia, and I don't know if I see a Sam Laporta year incoming for him, but I would say definitely a better than average rookie tight end year for sure.
Yeah. Agreed. Do you guys have anything you want to say about either Donald Parham of the Chargers or Adam Troutman, Greg Dulcich of your Broncos? Are they going to be fantasy relevant this year, you think?
The only tight end to maybe, and this is part of either the waiver or just like during training camp, keep an eye on, for the Broncos, it's Lucas Kroll.
Okay.
6'5" tight end. They nabbed him off a New Orleans practice squad about the halfway point of the season. He plays in the Buffalo game, gets a touchdown. He's actually the guy Russ was trying to throw a game-winning touchdown to against the Houston Texans, but he threw it in the wrong spot. So he's the guy that, again, Peyton has talked about all through OTAs. So now, again, I don't know.
Outside of Jimmy Graham, name a tight end that Sean Payton has cared anything about in his offense. Let's not go there. Let's not
say Caleb did kind of make a face at you.
Get it out of here.
Caleb makes a lot of faces. Again, that's the guy, if you're looking for someone deep, that I think once training camp is done, he's going to be the guy.
I'll give you that's
Denver.
a deep cut, and I don't disagree. He could end up being the tight end one. I just don't. Fantasy relevant is a big stretch.
Maybe not fantasy relevant, maybe dynasty, maybe if you haven't had your draft yet, that's a guy you can stash that your 4th or 5th round pick, or just pick him up off of waivers. But that'd be the guy. Dulcich is never healthy, and Troutman is literally just a guy. He's not fantasy relevant.
Yeah, and I think Parham's the same. He's got some sneaky talent, but he can't stay on the field a lot of times, it feels like. So, and then in that offense, he's going to be asked to block a lot more than he's going to be asked to catch passes, like we talked about, that wide receiver core that can go 4 deep, young, inexperienced, but the balls are going to be thrown out there than they are the tight end. So I don't think either one of those teams has a relevant conversation talking point, if you will.
Yeah. I mean, as a XFL, now UFL fan, the spring football fan, I love Donald Parham. I think he's a fun player, but he's probably not worth more than maybe sprinkling a little bit on anytime touchdown throughout the season. I don't think fantasy football wise, he's going to do a whole lot. And speaking of bets, why don't we jump right over to, we call it best bets, but it's more of a lock and a dog. I'll let you guys start. We'll start with Pinky. What do you got for your lock?
Yeah, this is Pinky's area of expertise, so I'm gonna let him kind of give his stuff here, and we'll see what he has to throw out.
Let me pull up my notepad. I wrote it down. That way I had the numbers. All right, and I am a homer, but I also like to think I can think rationally. I root for all teams. I do have jerseys from half the league of teams. So I'm a big football guy. I still root for a lot of different players. But
those are all true statements from him. He's not just speaking. I promise you. That closet to his right is stacked full of individual players' jerseys because the dude just loves the game. So he does have a fairly good objective lens.
Love it.
I do think the Broncos over 5.5 is a lock. We won 8 games with Russell Wilson, and Russell Wilson is like the complete opposite of what Sean Payton wants in a quarterback.
Yeah.
Even with a rookie, I do think 6 to 8 is like our window. I don't think we're going better than that. People are talking playoffs and it's possible. I don't have that kind of hope because I don't think the playmakers are in place yet. But I do think we're going to be better than people think. I do think they're going to be a tough team because they're going to run the ball and play good defense. That normally wins you some games. That usually wins you some games you probably shouldn't win as well. So I do think the 5.5 is too low, and it's plus 105. So I just think that's just an easy one to double your money on. And I just don't see them. I don't see them winning more than 8, but I don't see them losing and only winning 5 games.
Yeah, I agree with that. Caleb, did you say you had one, or you're leaving the bets to Pinky?
No, this is I actually had to put the apps down last year because I went to 0 multiple times and decided that the weeks I bet we all lost, and the weeks I wasn't doing things, Pinky and one of our other buddies seemed to have some nice bankrolls. So I thought I'm just going to put it down for now. I'm taking a little bit of a hiatus.
We'll get him back, though. We'll get him back.
Pinky talks to me all the time. I give him some advice here and there because if I'm not betting, I feel comfortable that he can win off of it. If I put money down on it, though, then it's worthless advice. So I have a curse. The curse is ugly. We won't get into it now. But, yeah, I'll let Pinky. Pinky's got a pretty good streak. The dude bats better than Hall of Fame numbers if we're talking baseball. So he's worth listening to.
I like it. And I completely understand. My buddy Nick Fortune that was in the chat earlier, he bets a lot of soccer. And I always tell him, you can send me the plays. And he likes to bet a guy. His name's Kevin De Bruyne or something like that. Yeah. He likes to bet him a lot in different parlays and stuff. And anytime I tail those, it loses. Anytime I don't tail them, it wins. So I completely understand that approach.
Quick side note, just to give you an idea here. And then I'll let Pinky give his other lock and dogs here. I have a good buddy of mine who thought he found a hack where you bet every baseball game to not go to extra innings every day. And he had won it was 6 nights in a row or something, 6 days in a row. Then he took a couple days off because he didn't want to jinx it because eventually it's going to happen. Then he won another 5 or 6 days in a row, took some time off, won 3 or 4 more, took some time off. And then that's when he brought it to my attention. Every time I bet with him, we lost. We did it probably 5 or 6 weeks in a row. I stopped. He started winning again. So the curse is a real thing. Pinky's aware of it. It's J.K. Dobbins is part of the curse, unfortunately. You're welcome, ladies and gentlemen. But there's reasons I've decided to just keep my money.
I like it. I'll read Miranda's real quick because she did give me hers. For her lock, she had Chiefs to score 1+ touchdown in every regular season game. I think that's
like that.
Yeah, a no-brainer one.
Yeah.
It's at -155, so it's a little juiced. But our buddy Cody Z from the NASCAR Gambling Podcast always says you only pay the juice if you lose. So, I think that's a really solid bet. For mine, I'm going to say Patrick Mahomes higher than 34.5 passing touchdowns. And right now, that's at +130. I think it's a better offense. I think he had a little bit of a down year last year. He only had 27. But this boost helps him get back to his normal numbers. The previous 3 years, 41, 37, 38. He also had 50 back in 2018. I don't know if I see him getting back to 50, but I think 34.5 passing touchdowns higher than that is easily doable.
I love that one.
Yeah,
I love that a lot. They let the defense carry them last year, and his job was not to make mistakes. I think they're going to just let it rip this year.
Yep.
I'm going to bet all of these guys. Just keep that in mind.
So they're going to lose? Is that what you're telling us?
No, these are the locks. On the lock, there's just no way you can lose on the lock.
Fair enough.
Do you want to test that theory? Do you really want me to put money down, Pinky? I don't think we want to do that.
If you put money down on the Broncos and they lose, and they only win 4 games and they get a top 5 pick, I'll sign up for that any day.
Shador Sanders. I guess we win either way, right? It's either money or a quarterback.
There you go. All right. What'd you got for a dog, Pinky?
I think you'll like this one. I think Brock Bowers over 4.5 touchdowns is at +115.
Ooh, I do like that. That's he's such a dynamic guy. I don't know how he doesn't get that. And they drafted him that high for a reason, right? I mean, I like that one a lot. And then getting plus money, that's interesting. Caleb, do you have anything to weigh in on that one?
I struggle with that one a little bit, only because I think people are underestimating the Mayer impact, and then what the rest of the weapons open up for Adams, who is the top dog. And, Minshew's going to force the ball to him a little bit at times, just because that's the nature of that duo, that dynamic. So I feel like the Raiders are going to run it a lot more in that red zone, and especially inside the 10, then those tight ends maybe see those options. So a little risky for my taste on that one.
All righty. For Miranda's dog, it looks like she had to one-up me. So I had Patrick Mahomes higher than 34.5. She found a bet where you can get Mahomes to throw 40-plus passing touchdowns in the regular season at +500.
Dang.
He has hit this twice. He hit it in 2018, and then 2 years ago he hit it at 41. I don't think that's out of the realm of possibilities, though, with the added weapons.
Here's something that I listened to one of the local sports, Denver sports guys talk a lot, and something they've been talking up. And this might actually this might help put that stamp on that. What a lot of people aren't talking about is the change to the kickoff rule, and that with that new kickoff rule, a lot of teams are going to get much better field position. When you start with better field position, you make one big play, 2 big plays, you're already in field goal range. Points are going up. It's going to happen.
I like that. Plus 500.
Plus 500 for that. I don't like tying my money up for that long, but that might be worth just throwing 20 bones on and being like,
Pinky
yeah,
likes
that's
that
going to
quick
be
fix.
I don't like putting money on hold for a long time, but that might be one worth throwing 20 bones at and being like, okay, I'll collect that 100 later.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like it. So for mine, it's not as juicy as the plus 500, but plus 370, the 1-2 exact that you can bet. This is on DraftKings in the division. I got Chiefs as first and Raiders as second. I think that the Chargers do take a step back this year. I think the Broncos are going to take a step forward, but not to the point that they get second in the division. I think Raiders are going to be sneaky good. So that's plus 370. I don't want to derail us too much before we go, but I'm curious of your guys' thoughts since you brought the kickoff up. As a guy that watched spring football, I agree that they have to do something to get away from so many touchbacks. But I will say when the XFL and the USFL were both on, the XFL was using the current kickoff that the NFL is going to do. USFL was doing the traditional one. And the USFL kickoff was just more exciting to me. The XFL one didn't net a lot of yards. Now it does end up in better field position just because of the rules, but it didn't net better yards. Are you guys a fan of this? Or do you not have a lean either way? What do you think on it?
They had to do something to make sure that the play just didn't go away. So I'm all for it. I like spring football too. I like, innovation, trying things. So I'm interested to see how it accomplishes their goal.
Yeah.
I think with the coaching and the athletes that they're going to have in the special teams games, I think it is going to make a much larger impact in that case. And I do think teams are going to just have better starting position a lot. And that's going to lead to more points, which as fans we like. And now we don't have that play. If a team scored, we typically was like, okay, I can go to the bathroom. I can go grab another beer. Like now you got to be quick because that kickoff could be easily returned easy. So,
I don't like it. I'd rather they just move the kickoff back. But you're talking about a Bears fan who is yearning for the days of watching another Devin Hester, right?
Yeah.
Where every kickoff he could go all the way. And I think this does, just from watching in the XFL, now different caliber of talent, different coaching talent for sure in the XFL. It wasn't as exciting, but maybe the NFL does change that. I don't know. That's just kind of my feeling. Caleb, you said you like spring football. Did you have a USFL team you're going for this year?
Whoever Adrian Martinez was playing for.
Stallions, yeah. I guess you did mention, born in Lincoln, Husker fan.
Yeah.
That makes sense. I know he transferred out.
Former Heisman potential.
Dark horse Heisman candidate to start his sophomore year.
Yeah.
Pinky, that just is what it is, okay? He didn't live up to the hype, but that's not like it's not a true statement, okay?
He was exciting to watch. I will give you that. That Birmingham team, I don't know if anybody will ever beat them. They've won 3 spring football championships in a row. It's impressive with what Skip Holtz has been able to do. Thank you guys so much for joining Old Fashioned Football. You got to come back again sometime. It's been a lot of fun. Before I get you out of here, why don't you tell people where they can find you on socials and kind of what you got planned for maybe some content coming up, what you got coming up? Because I know you guys talk more than just football.
Yeah. We look for other content other than football, but at least for the moment, we've been doing our division previews. So we're going to finish up. We got 3 more to go. We've got AFC South, NFC West, and AFC. We always finish with the AFC West, the Broncos. That's where we know the most. So we'll finish up with that. We do a fantasy draft live normally with one of our shows in August. We'll do we actually do a full schedule prediction as well, where we'll go through the whole schedule team by team and predict. That usually is fun because we are wrong on a lot and right on some ones that you're like, oh wow, we did get that right. So that's fun. Socials, we're on Twitter at Nonsense Whiskey. Sports Nonsense was taken, so we had to do with Nonsense Whiskey. Of course, Facebook, Sports Nonsense and Whiskey. Instagram, same thing, and then YouTube. We're also on the MHRT network. They do have a lot of other shows as well, kind of similar to the SGPN network. They've got a lot of different content as well. So we're there pretty much every Tuesday night, and we definitely appreciate having you guys have us on. We love talking shop. We love chatting with folks with different opinions, folks from different areas of the country. That way you just get different points of view and you meet cool people. So
For sure.
Appreciate having us on. We will definitely do this again. Pleasure.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, cheers, guys. And that's all we got for tonight. Everybody have a good night. Thanks for joining. Make sure you give these guys a follow. I've checked into their shows, and it's always a good time. And because there's nothing beats talking sports and drinking whiskey. I mean, I will always stand by that. Everybody always asks, like, what's your podcast about? And I say, well, we talk football and we talk whiskey. And they said, that's a great combo. So I know sports and whiskey is an unbeatable combo, in my opinion. Thank you guys so much for joining. And that's our show. We are out of here for the night. Join us next week as we have Dylan Carney, the distiller of Savage and Cook, joining us live to answer all your questions about distilling or whiskey. Join us then. That's on the 17th, and we're looking forward to it.